I just want to welcome everybody to the Orange County Sewer District #1 Advisory Committee for Wednesday, February 16th. I appreciate you all taking time and coming on. And with that, if you would, please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Since we are remotely, I do have a flag here, though. So we'll hold it up. And I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
United States of America and to the republic
which it
stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Kelly, can you do a roll call?
Yes. Amo?
Here.
Benelli?
Present.
Cheney?
Here.
Hellers?
Here.
Tortel?
Present.
Tui?
Here.
6 present.
Great. We'll go right into it. And, what I'm going to do is combine A and B. They're both very closely tied together. But I would like to, before we go into anything else, is start with an update from Joe, if you would, regarding the public comment and our steps we've taken up till to today, and regarding the impaired waters.
The letter was submitted last Thursday. I think I sent it out to I know Mr. Denega, yourself, the chairwoman, Mr. Cheney, and one other I forget. My apologies. And obviously your staff in the legislative office. As of right now, I do not possess any other comments. I had not.
Okay.
They were due on Friday.
Okay, so we made that deadline.
Yes, sir.
Great. All right. Are there any other questions? Michael, are you waving to me, or you're muted?
No, I wasn't waving to you. I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
I
Okay.
will wave to you.
Okay. Hello. All right. With that, if Mary Beth, if you could give us a little update on where we stand with what we kind of continued on from last month.
Sure. So we're working on a couple of fronts moving forward. And from a technical perspective, we have the hydraulic model of the county sewer district is built out. So for everybody backing up, what that is you have a network of pipes that conveys wastewater from all of the different users eventually to the Harriman treatment plant. One of the parts of our work is to evaluate the capacity of that network of pipes and make recommendations for how to ensure that it can accommodate the flows that we have today, as well as those that are projected for the future, so that we can target in on where there may need to be capital improvements made. That model is complete. It's a computer model. So it is complete. We are working with Anthony and staff to obtain a few more inputs, which are based on meter installations. We'll recall the county has some movable meters, and we're working on getting those meters in place to obtain our data so we can have a couple more inputs. And our timing is actually ideal. March and April of every year are usually our highest flow months. And one of the things that we want to try to do is be really conservative in our evaluation. So getting those meters in place so that we can obtain the data during March and April give us the most conservative evaluation. So that's an excellent technical step moving forward. We're continuing to work on the planning of the expansion and the longevity improvements. and looking at, again, we talked about it the last time, the 3 million gallon expansion and the longevity improvements, as well as some options for a larger expansion, which could be phased and could be implemented at some point in the future. So we're continuing to work on that. And other aspects of the technical work, we are, as you know, engaged in a process where we are setting up two parts of this. One is the ability to test raw water, so not finished drinking water like at people's houses, but the water that is drawn out of the ground before it's treated to that goes into the drinking water system, which eventually ends up in the sewer system and at the Harriman treatment plant. And we've had really good cooperation from all of the water suppliers. There are two that remain that we'd like to have contact with that remain outstanding. And so I know Legislator Toohey was working on this. The two that are outstanding are the town of Chester and the village of South Blooming Grove. And those are very important as we consider this water testing that we need to do, and that's in support of the variance application, and can also be useful for the DEC as they work on the impaired waters analysis that Joe was just referencing, the comments that were made. And then the second thing is we have requested growth projections from the communities. This ties into a couple of different things that we're doing. Obviously, the environmental impact analysis of the expansion of the plant, but it also ties into that hydraulic analysis I just mentioned. It's good for us to understand what's happening today, but it's great for us to be able to plan for the future. So again, I know Legislator Toohey had reached out and I think had some meetings with some of the folks that we are looking for information from. And as far as my notes go, we have we need information from the village and town of Monroe, and I think Legislator Toohey met with them recently, so hopefully we'll see something from them soon. Village of South Blooming Grove and the town of South Blooming Grove. And for both of those, we did reach out to Al Fusco because he is, I believe, their engineer. We have not heard back from Al, but we'll follow up with him. And I think, let's see, Speedy's compliance, we submitted the annual update for the mercury minimization plan. That was due by March 1st. It was actually submitted on February 11th. So we're in compliance there. And we do have a submission that's going in on for March 1 that's also on the schedule of compliance for the Speedy's permit. I think that's my update, unless people have questions or, you know, Anthony or Bob or Eric want to add anything. Legislator Toohey, you are muted.
There you go. I think that's a first, you know, but at least I had it off because Tom Brabenek sent me a message saying that I should turn it off because it was echoing. So I'm glad you reminded me, Mary Beth. But I just wanted to say that Chairwoman Benelli and myself, Chairwoman, setting up a meeting with the Village of South Blooming Grove municipal leaders sometime in the next few weeks. And as far as Chester, we will reach out. I will reach out to them again as well. With that now, Mary Beth, as far as everything else that you said, that's fine. I just wanted to see, is there any more that you can go into detail a little bit? I know we're so ahead of this on the design development, but I know when we spoke last week that there was, you know, you kind of explained it a little bit better, you know, to me about, you know, the possibility of the newer technologies that are out there now, as well as the module of building on these newer technologies that would possibly someday allow us to go from expansion from 6 to 9 to possibly 12 million gallons a day. So if you could just touch on that briefly, that would be great just for everybody else's benefit.
Sure. So folks may remember back in 2016, we evaluated, I believe, 5 different technical approaches to expanding the treatment plant. All of them include longevity improvements. The nature of the longevity improvements does change depending on what expansion option is selected. We looked at a broad array of technologies. They all have their pluses and their minuses. All of them would meet the regulatory requirements of the species permit, with the exception of the total dissolved solids and chloride. That's a treatment technology approach that's separate from the biological process that we would look at. We had preliminarily evaluated a number of different approaches and initially thought about something called a sequencing batch reactor, which is a kind of activated sludge technology to expand the plant from 6 to 9 MGD. It remains a very good technology. It's been around for a long time. It's very appropriate for the county. Our challenge is not a technology challenge as much as it's a site challenge. If I know a number of you had the benefit of joining us on a beautiful summer day to walk through the treatment plant. And what you found when you got there is that we do have a fair amount of land, but we have 3 different treatment trains sitting in parallel to each other. And underneath the ground where we see grass, there's a lot of yard piping and underground utilities and things that do constrain development of the site. So even when you see grass, we might not be able to put a structure over the top of the grass because there's something underneath it. So as we think about the possibility that we might want the plant to go from 6 to 9 in the near term and then someday get bigger than that, we start thinking about what technologies afford us the capability of doing that in, as Legislator Toohey said, a modular fashion that meet a couple of other really important criteria. One of them is we had to keep the plant running while we build something new. We're not going to tell people to stop flushing their toilets and take showers while we're in a 2-year construction timeline. So we have to figure out how will we accommodate the flows that we have while we build an expansion to the plant, and then how do we think about that future where we may want an additional expansion to the plant. So that leads us to consider some other technologies. The one that you and I spoke about, Legislator Toohey, is something called a membrane bioreactor. That's a technology. It's not brand new, but in the grand scheme of treating water, it's one of the newer technologies. It treats water in a very efficient manner. So the tank sizes are smaller to get the equivalent number of gallons of treatment out of them. The capital costs are similar to the other technologies that we've looked at in the not so distant past. 8-10 years ago, it was a little more expensive, but the industry has levelized, as it often does with new technologies. Other technologies either get more expensive or new technology prices come down. So it's, from a capital perspective, very similar to the other options that we've looked at. And then from an operations perspective, the one thing that we always do take into consideration is it is a relatively energy intensive technology, uses a bit more energy. Something to be considered for sure, but in balance with the need to potentially make the plant a much larger plant in the future. There's some trade-offs there. So one of the things, actually, many of you have met Brock, who is our senior engineer who's working on this project in detail, that he and I were just discussing today, is we're going to be updating the flow information that we have, that we've been considering in terms of the hydraulics of the expansion. We don't see that having a big influence on technology decisions, but we're also going to be reevaluating the costs, and in particular looking at the energy costs, given where we are today with energy costs, because our job is to give you all the information so that you can be in a position to make decisions. But the good news is there are opportunities here to expand the plant beyond 6 MGD to 9 MGD, and then possibly in the future consider a larger expansion. And we are doing all of our work with that in mind. You are on mute again.
Sorry, everybody.
It's all right.
Now, we've all heard sequential batching going back since we restarted up this advisory committee. And you've had plenty of experience with that. Now, with the newer technologies, and I think that's the membrane biotechnology that
Yep.
you just mentioned.
Mhm.
Now, although it's a newer technology, or have you had any experience with that in the past, or are there any that are actually in existence now?
Yes, there are a number of them that we've designed that are in existence, and there certainly are a number of them around that others have designed as well. They range in size from fairly small, because one of the benefits of this technology is that it takes up a lot less room. So if you have a site where you're very constrained, so there are some there. The closest one to you is the one that was built in Tuxedo. It is is wedged between Route 17 and the river, the Ramco River, and Thruway. And that's a 500,000 gallon a day facility, so it's much smaller than your site, but it's exactly the same technology, no difference. It would be built exactly the same. There are others that are out there that are even larger. This technology is also used a lot in industry because it's very robust and it can handle really, really high loadings into the system and create essentially drinking water on the other end. So it's a great technology. One of the things that we often do with folks is take them on a tour, take people to a site to see one of these types of technologies, how they work. What are the benefits? What are the drawbacks? Talk to operators, talk to owners, those kinds of things. If that's something that anyone from the county would like to do, I think we probably would wait until the weather got a little bit better, but we could arrange a tour of a site to see this type of technology if anyone's interested.
Yes, I'm definitely interested, and we can do that down the road as we progress along. I want to open up for any questions to other committee members. I don't see any hands. Kelly, do you see any? Oh, Chairwoman Benella, please.
Since you have had the familiarity with doing these particular things, can you ballpark, I know it's only a ballpark idea, but some type of a range we're talking about as far as costs are concerned for our needs?
That is really difficult for us to do right now. We definitely are working on that we're working on that right now. We're working on a new cost estimate right now to give you a range.
Okay.
It is certainly not going to be any less expensive than what we've talked about in the past. And we were in a mode where we were talking somewhere between 50 and 60 million for this expansion and longevity improvement when we talked about it, I think, probably early in the pandemic. So costs have not gone down. In fact, they've gone up quite a bit. And in our experience, we may see costs level out. We do not generally see costs get reduced, but we're working on a new cost estimate actually right now. So I don't have a good number for you to give you today, but certainly it's going to be at least those numbers that we were talking about before. We had previously talked about somewhere in the $25 to $26 million range for the longevity improvements, and then a similar cost for the expansion. It's going to be at least that, if not perhaps more, again, given that a number of years have gone by and we have definitely seen some price inflation.
And one other quick question. You mentioned that the closest plant to us would be Tuxedo. Did you do that plant?
We did.
Okay.
We did. We designed that plant.
How much did your $500,000 come in at? Do you remember?
About 14 million, and that was 4 years ago.
Okay. Thank you.
And that was essentially a greenfield plant. It sits adjacent to the existing Town of Tuxedo plant. And it was designed, it was a cooperative agreement between the what's called Tuxedo Reserve. People may remember there was a big housing development.
Yes.
So they needed wastewater treatment. The town needed a new plant. So it was a cooperative agreement between the two entities, between the development and the town, to build a new plant that would serve the needs of both. So we designed that plant.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Mary Beth, now if that's a 500,000 gallon plant, I just got a quick question. Like how, if you have that modular in place, like how big could they go? I mean, is that just pretty much doubling it or?
Yeah, so they're designed to also be a modular site because if people may remember, I think that housing development was, I don't remember, well over 1,000 housing units. I can't remember the exact number. That clearly were not going to be built all at one time. They were going to be built out over a series of years. So that that plant was designed to be modular. In that case, the way they did that, the technology is essentially membrane cassettes. They're like big racks of membrane that are suspended in a tank that's full of wastewater. So what they did there was we designed and purchased, we designed the tanks, built the tanks, purchased the racks that fit in the first set of tanks. And then the second tanks were constructed, but no racks are in them. They're not in use. They're just waiting for the future day when they may need more racks to increase their flow. They chose to do it that way. Another way you do it is that you build the tanks that you need and you purchase just the racks of membranes that you need for today, but you have a dashed line on your plan that shows where that next tank would be constructed to, again, put more of those cassettes, these giant racks that fit inside the tank. So it's a very modular technology in that respect. The key to doing this, if we remember back to kind of our early discussions, the wastewater treatment plant is built in stages. So there's when the water first comes on the site, and folks maybe remember we went into this relatively small, incredibly smelly building. The key to a modular treatment plant is designing, that's called the headworks, designing the headworks for whatever size you think your future flow might get to, so that in the later design and build that, and then in the later phases, you can add biological treatment as you go, because it's like the front door. You have to have the front door big enough to accommodate. So in your case, we've done that consideration for the Harriman plant. We have to take into account not just the average day, but also the peak day. So how much water do we get on our busiest day? And that's what that headworks has been designed at. That then gives you the flexibility to do this modular design for expansion down the road.
Thanks, Mary Beth. Any questions from my fellow committee members? No? Okay. I want to thank you, Mary Beth, for your explanations and and enlightening us. And
Sure.
If there's no other questions, we'll move down to item number C. And Bob and Anthony, you're up. You're muted.
There we go. Good afternoon. I'll be brief. Item C, sewer meters update. That's been cleared for to go out to bid. We expected to hit the vendors on March 14th to be available for them to prepare bids. In the interim, we'll be beating the bushes, and we've already given General Services a list of potential bidders, but we're going to beat the bushes and get as many more as we can. I'd like to get a greater number of bids than we did last time. The other item we have is the South Blooming Grove and Chester Improvement Project.
Questions on that?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, before you go on, I see Legislator Cheney has a question.
Just a quick one. When are the bids going to be due?
3 to 4 weeks after. We haven't selected a date, but it will be about 3 to 4 weeks.
A month,
So
yeah.
mid-April.
Yeah.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator Cheney. Are there any other questions from the committee? All right, that's good progress, Bob. I appreciate that update. And now you started to go into our item 1D, Village of South Blooming Grove and Chester Improvement Project. Why don't you just proceed on that?
Sure. This is related to the longstanding order issues in Airplane Park, which is that area receives sewage from both the Village of South Blooming Grove and the Chester pump stations. They both pump into a common transmission line, and the odors at Airplane Park are legendary. So there's a treatment system on the Chester pump station to remove the hydrogen sulfide level, bring the levels down. Basically, it's an oxygenation system made by a company named ANNUE, ANNUE. What's been arranged is a pilot test for a week at their the only treatment that South Blooming Grove has is a sodium hypochlorite. They add sodium hypochlorite to the or chlorine to the wet well at the pump station. So this pilot would be to put a ANNUE system which comes on a trailer at the South Blooming Grove pump station and run it for a week. Starting on, it's scheduled now for March 21st, to start on March 21st and run till the 25th. That's a Monday to a Friday. So that's going to give us a lot of data and show, we hope to see a great improvement to the hydrogen sulfide levels that are down at Airplane Park. We have gas monitoring down there now, and we'll be utilizing that during the test. So if you have any questions on that, be glad to try to help.
Now, is that same test have to be performed at the Chester station also?
Yeah, we'll be operating both.
South Blooming. Oh,
We'll be operating both. Yeah, we'll be operating both systems and turning one on, turning one off, and doing that kind of thing to evaluate both pump stations and what they're contributing to the hydrogen sulfide and the levels of treatment that we need. So the effectiveness of that system will be evaluated at the same. The existing system at Chester will be evaluated at the same time that we're evaluating the pilot system at South Blooming.
So do you do the pilot test in South Blooming Grove and then take the trailer to Chester?
No.
No.
The system that's at
Is oxygenation already in Chester?
same system that's is at Chester now.
Yeah. Okay. Just want to see if there's any. Thank you, Bob. If there's any questions, concerns, Legislator Cheney.
Yeah. What's the status of the Chester pump station? Is that operating and functioning properly, or is it not?
Yeah, as of actually this week, they replaced a pump, so they are 100% right now. What they deliver is about 130 liters per minute of oxygen into the system. The pilot study that's going to be rolled out into Blooming Grove, it'll be two 90-liter per minute units that are going to be in series that we're going to be running out there at the Blooming Grove pump station. But yes, Chester is 100% right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator Cheney. I think that's it. Are there any other questions? Or Barry, do you have your hand up again, or you just didn't come down yet? Okay. I see Legislator Amo. Go ahead, Legislator. You're muted.
Looks like an artist.
Yes. Let's see what the bridge behind
We started with the design, and said we wanted to get a detailed explanation of the design. I think we got a good part of that. But I also want to know cost to do the design of a plant that we might need. I did not hear that number or any discussion about that number. If that could come up, I'd appreciate it.
Mary Beth, do you want to take that? You're muted, Mary Beth.
So yes, so we would think the design of a plant that addresses your needs, meets the longevity improvements, and right now we're thinking that it's a technology that takes you a 3 million gallon expansion and gives you that ability to potentially make this larger. You're in the $3 million range for design services to get you to bidding.
Okay. And that's to get, the complete plant, the cost of that plant, you talked about earlier, $60-70 million, you thought. And that to design something like that, you think it would cost us just to get sort of thing designed so we could look at it. And it'd be ready to build at that point, and we have it at that point for $3 million. Okay, thank you.
3 million, yeah, 3 million would be to get you to bidding to get contractors, right? So obviously in the design process, we have a lot of steps. We're because we're doing the EIS right now, we're doing preliminary design. The end of the EIS is going to give us design plans that are going to be somewhere in that 20 to 30% range just to get through the EIS process. And then obviously using that as our springboard, continuing on. So that number would get you through to a point where you have bid documents, you are, you've got regulatory approvals to the extent that we can anticipate what those are going to be. Obviously we have some ways to go on those, but $3 million is a good budget number.
All of us, I know we're all talking about the need to get us to full capacity, given the fact that we're really close to that point now, and then being able to expand. Is there any part of that design that can be done in piecemeal so we can, at a lesser cost, to get to 3 million? And can something be done in the next 6 months to kind of get us ready for that? Something along that line, or is it all 3 million only, and that's the only way you do it?
Well, so I think our challenge here is, right, we have a couple of things we have to figure out. One is, and I know we talked about this the last time we were together, I think everybody on this call agrees that 9 MGD is probably not the end of the sizing of a plant to meet the needs of the county sewer district and its other service areas, right? So we kind of need to make that primary decision, because that is going to drive technology, which is going to drive, the effort, right? Not necessarily the cost, but what are we designing? And then the other part of this that's really critical to this is, this is a substantial investment by the county. We recognize that. We really do need the regulatory input to make sure that what we're designing at the end of the day will be something that can be approved by the regulators. Now, we've designed literally hundreds of wastewater treatment plants. We know, all of the typical design standards and all those. That's not really the question, right? The question for us is, are we, do we need to be thinking about treating total dissolved solids and chlorides at any level, whether it's to meet the water quality standard or something that would come out of a total maximum daily load, a TMDL, which I know has been discussed at length, which is a watershed-based specific analysis of inputs of those constituents. So that's our challenge. We don't want to get too far ahead of the game, too far out over our skis, and commit too much time and resources when we have these unknown factors. But again, advancing the EIS, everything that we're doing and the work that we're doing right now has to be done regardless of of where we go from a regulatory perspective. So that the work that we're doing today is preliminary design work. So we are working along to get to that point where we're ready to, once we have that determination, then we're really ready to go. So I hope that clarifies that, answers your question.
I think so, and I think the question, I think I remember hearing this way back, if I can remember, but what is the current timeline to get to the completion of the DEIS? Do you have something in mind?
Right. So we're working along, diligently on this. A big part of what we need for our information is the water quality sampling. And like I said, we've got most of the participants lined up for that. And the county's going to be conducting that water quality sampling. So there's no cost and no impact on the water suppliers. But we do need to, because we want to ensure that the data that we obtain is used in our variance, our EIS, and in the impaired water bodies in the TMDL. We need our data to be conducted and obtained underneath a quality assurance plan that's been approved by the DEC. So on a parallel track, we have a quality assurance plan that we've prepared, a draft plan that we've prepared. That needs to get to the DEC, and the DEC needs to review and approve that. We would like to do that sampling in April, if we can. So we need to get that rolling, because then that kind of works on our parallel track. Once we get that information, it'll feed into our process, and we should have an environmental impact statement prepared within several months after we have that information. It's just a matter of trying to line up the train cars. We got a couple of moving parts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amo. I see Chairwoman Bonelli, hand up. Katie, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quite frankly, I think that Mary Beth answered some of my questions, because mine had to do with our connection with the regulatory agencies and where we were with notification of moving from 6 to 9. Have we discussed that with them, and then the variance? So in your discussion with Mr. Amo, I think you kind of answered some of my questions, and you're obviously on top of things with that, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Great. Thank you, Chairwoman. Are there any other comments or questions? Not seeing any. I see that we're through our agenda. And as far as the next meeting, I will talk to our advisory board members, and we'll see. I mean, if we feel that we'll access it and assess it and see if we need a meeting in March, or otherwise we will go for April. But are there any thoughts on that? No? Okay. Well, we'll keep you posted. And if we end up having a meeting, it would be the third Wednesday of the month, March 16th. But we will be in touch. Kelly will be in touch with everyone. And without any other comments or questions, take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved, Tortel.
Okay. Thank you, Legislator Cheney and Legislator Tortel. All right. Thank you all for joining today, and a lot of great information there, and just keep moving, try to keep moving it forward. That's what we're doing. So everyone take care and stay safe. Thank you.
Thanks,
you all.
Peter. Thanks,
Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.